Hello, everybody. You are logging in to our course, Price Like a Pro, Mastering Balloon Decor Pricing Strategies for Profitable Success. My name's Johnathon Gerber, and I'm one of the founding owners of the Balloon Guild. I am excited that you're here, and I think you are going to learn a lot and that this will help your business tremendously going forward. So let's get started. Little bit about myself, just so you know where I'm coming from. I started in 2001 as a sole proprietor twisting balloon animals. What that really means is I did not have an LLC. I just operated with my social security number. That was the first business that I ever started. And it was basically working under somebody else as a 1099 employee. In 2007, I became the manager of that company. And then in 2010, I bought that company and turned it into an LLC. Now, 3 years later or so, I ended up buying my first balloon decorating business. And then I bought several other businesses up until COVID. And then when COVID came, right before that, I moved out of my house finally into a workshop. And then in 2020, I opened a storefront as part of my workshop. I had a workshop in the back, storefront in the front, and then COVID hit. And when we all came back from COVID, I realized I didn't really want to be bothered with a storefront anymore. And so I closed that part down. And now I currently operate out of a workshop with a team of people. We actually have two workshops in different locations with a team of people who are getting the job done on my behalf. And I'm excited to be able to share as much of that information as I can with regards to pricing with you guys. So our best year was 2022. This is being recorded in 2024. I do not currently have my 2023 taxes completed. So the numbers that I'm going to share with you from my own business are coming from the 2022 tax year. I only tell you that so you have a little bit of an idea where some of these numbers are coming from that I'm going to use for my own personal journey, but I will tell you you're going to need to use your own numbers so that the prices make sense for you. So, what are we going to cover? We're going to cover this in the course in multiple sections. Now, each of these sections that are on this overall overview are not going to be their own individual section, but we are going to break this up so it's in manageable chunks. Overall, you're looking at a ballpark of about 3 hours of recorded video that we're going to be able to share with you so that you can understand all of this stuff. Okay, so what we're going to cover, we're going to talk about mastering pricing essentials and the reason why that's important. We will cover key factors that are going to influence your pricing. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about pricing pitfalls and the things that you can do that can kind of mess things up for you if you're not careful. We will take some time and understand 4 different pricing strategies. There's a ton of pricing strategies out there, but these are the 4 that we have found are the most commonly used for the industry of balloon decorating. We are going to take some time and actually crunch some numbers. We're going to do some examples. We're going to go ahead and get some information that's very specific, and we're going to give you some practice actually figuring out prices for different kind of decorating items. We are going to talk about the continual need to update your prices and why you might want to do that. And then we're going to talk about how to effectively communicate pricing and value to your customers. And then at the end, we will have time for questions and answers. So if you're watching this live and you have questions, please write them down, save them till the end of the webinar. And then if your question has not been answered, we're going to give you some time to ask that. So write your question in the comment section. We have moderators who are going to be watching this, and they already know what's coming in this lesson. So if they know that you have a question that is not going to be answered, they're going to make sure that we can get back to it. If you're watching this as a course and you have questions that don't get answered, well, you're part of our subscription service. You should be part of our private Facebook group. You can ask any questions about this course or about anything, and we will do our best to answer those questions for you. So let's dive in. All right, mastering pricing essentials. Like, what does that even mean? Pricing concepts are different things that we're going to cover, different kind of pricing concepts, but they are the fundamental principles and strategies that businesses use to determine the price of their products or services. They encompass various factors, including cost analysis, market demand, competitor pricing, perceived value, and profit margins. And by understanding these things and applying them effectively, your business will be able to set prices that are competitive, profitable, and reflective of the value that they offer to your customers. So, did you know, this is a little bit of Debbie Downer news right here, but did you know that within the first year, almost 20% of the businesses fail? That means 1 out of 5 businesses do not succeed through the first year. And that's kind of sad to me because this is someone's hopes and dreams, and they started this company. And within a year, 1 out of 5 typically aren't going to make it. Within 5 years, half the businesses that start do not make it. Within 10, we're looking at 65%. And what's crazy to me is even if you've survived 10 years, there are still businesses that will fail between 10 and 15 years, and only 25% of the businesses that start make it through 15 years or more. So there's a part of me that's kind of sad. I'm not sure how skewed these numbers are for people who start a business and then realize that they need to be doing something else, not because their business fails necessarily, but because they make another decision. I don't know how much these numbers are influenced by those types of decisions. I'm sure they are some. But the main thing to me is if you want to stay in business, you're going to have obstacles to overcome. And obviously, by these statistics, a lot of businesses are not able to overcome them. The Balloon Guild is here to make sure that you are not one of the 75% that don't make it beyond 15 years. And that if you choose to stay in business and to do this line of work, we're here to help you make sure that's possible. So my question for you is, why do you think these businesses do not succeed? What is one of the major factors? There's a lot of factors when you do your research. There's a lot of factors, but there is one factor that I have seen on every list of reasons why businesses do not succeed, and that factor is money and cash flow problems. The statistic is 82% of the businesses either fail because of cash flow problems or at least experience cash flow problems at one time or another. And it doesn't matter how long you get in business. There are things that change for you throughout the course of your business. An example would be you hire your first employee. Now you have an obligation of payroll that you didn't have before. If your numbers aren't correct, that can create a major problem for you. You move out of your house for the first time, and now you have the obligation of rent or lease payments. You buy a work vehicle, you add to your expenses, and they're required expenses that you can't really just get rid of. You're changing the numbers, and if you're not careful, those numbers can wreck you. So again, we're here to help. I'm excited to talk about this because I've kind of been through some of these things myself. And I would say, yes, my business has experienced cash flow problems in the past. And it is something that because of the way that we do our pricing, we were able to make adjustments on the fly and correct so that that is not a continued problem. It's a big deal to me that if people are employees of mine, that I am able to pay them without fail. That is my number one goal. And I feel like that's only able to happen because we're getting our prices. Our prices and our marketing and sales are up to speed with what we need to do the business in order for success. And I want that for you too. So, mastering pricing essentials, the importance, we just kind of went over it a little bit, but mastering correct pricing is essential to drive profitability, to gain a competitive edge, to enhance customer satisfaction, and to ensure long-term success and sustainability for your business. It requires a deep understanding of market dynamics, customer needs, cost structures, and pricing strategies, as well as a commitment that's going to have ongoing evaluation and optimization of your numbers. It's very important that you realize that you're not stuck where you're at right now. Just because you've set a price for something does not mean you're stuck there. You can modify this, and we'll talk about that later. I also want to point out one of the interesting parts of this is it says that mastering correct pricing is essential to enhance customer satisfaction. That's interesting to me because getting your prices right, which often is going to mean raising them from what they are now, will actually give your customers more satisfaction than undercharging them would, for example, or conversely overcharging them. You need to get your pricing right because it's going to make your customers happy. All right, there are some key factors that will influence pricing. One of them is the one that I'm pretty sure everybody who is in business at least has some kind of a clue about this particular influencing factor, and that is the cost of the materials that is required in order for you to build the balloon decor design or to build whatever it is that you're selling. So in our industry, we're talking about balloons, we're talking about ribbon, we're talking about helium, we are talking about what it costs for framing, the gas that you use in your vehicle to deliver your decor items from point A to point B is a used material that should be a factor in your pricing because it's something used up because you have a job. So the cost of materials will encompass everything that you have to pay for in order to get a job done that is used up by that job. The cost of labor. This is another one that if you are working by yourself, oftentimes you're going to overlook this one because a lot of small business owners, which is all of us, but a lot of us tend to not really pay ourselves. We kind of give ourselves whatever's left over once all the bills are paid. And unless you're tracking all of this stuff very, very well, then you're probably not even aware at what your income is until the end of the year when you do your taxes. And then you think, wow, I made this much money. Where did it all go? Because I only got to pay myself X amount of dollars, but our company made so much more. And I know it doesn't cost that much money to build a balloon column. So where's all the rest of it going, right? Some of it should be going to labor, but you should know that number. And if you're working by yourself, you got to keep in mind you are the labor. You are the inflation crew. You are the delivery crew. You're the takedown crew. You're the office manager. You're the sales and marketing person. You are every one of those employees in one. But you should be charging for those employees' work as part of your pricing. It should be a factor. Okay, market conditions will influence your prices. I'll just give you a really easy example. COVID. I don't care what your price is for a ceiling chandelier made out of balloons for a big fancy pants event. In March of 2020, you could have charged $0 for that chandelier and nobody would have bought it because everybody had to stay home. However, what we found in this industry was many balloon decorators pivoted and started doing yard decor, which is where the money was to be found in those cases because people were doing drive-by visits. They were doing drive-by celebrations for people who had birthdays. And that meant that those items had value in our industry where items that should cost so much more to a customer, their value went to zero because they were not something our customers could use. It's a very extreme example of market conditions and how they influence pricing, but the point is made. Who your clients are is part of your market conditions. If you're doing birthday celebrations and that's your only clients, then your prices may end up having to be different than somebody who's doing corporate celebrations or corporate events. and the client base is different, and it requires, and I'm using that word very intentionally, it requires a different price structure and price levels for different kind of customers. I'm not saying that you should have one price for customer A and a second one for customer B. What I am saying is either you're going to have separate parts of your company that cater to these different customers, in which case then you might have two prices, or you're going to be focused on customer A, which is the one that should be the most profitable. And if customer B calls you, well, these are our prices. And you're going to know based on this, what we're going to go over, you're going to know you have wiggle room to negotiate your pricing with a customer that maybe needs it to be a little bit different. But it's not where you start. You're not just going to give them a different price. That said, these are the things that they influence why you're going to set your prices where you are. Okay, overhead. Overhead is the most commonly overlooked expense and factor that should be a major influencing factor on pricing. Overhead, I guarantee you, that is the answer to the question, where did all my money go that my company made? We did 100 grand last year, and I put 20 grand in my pocket, and I don't know where the rest of it went. I guarantee you the answer is overhead. And it is the expenses that are necessary for the day-to-day operations that have no impact on you actually having jobs. So if a job does not go out the door today, am I still paying somebody to answer the phones? Am I still paying somebody to do my marketing for me? Do I still have a car or vehicle payment, whether we have a job going out the door or not? Do I still have to pay for insurance, rent payments? You have overhead. I don't care what kind of business you have overhead. And this, I'm not a tax professional, so I'm not giving you tax advice. I'm saying this is something you should ask your tax person, your CPA. But you have deductions that the government will allow you to take, which a lot of those are going to be overhead expenses if it's not directly related to materials and labor. So there's a lot of different things. We are going to get into overhead, and it is something that can be scary when you start looking into what is overhead. If you Googled overhead, it's going to be confusing. It's going to be scary, but we're going to make it really easy for you. And it is going to require some work, and the more work that you do, the better. The better your numbers are going to be. However, it's going to be easier than you just figuring it out on your own. Okay, now we have identified 10 pricing pitfalls that a lot of people make. Now, not everybody makes all of these mistakes. So as we go through this list, think to yourself, is this something that I have done in the past? Is it something that I'm doing today? Is this something that I think is going to be a problem in the future? And if so, what am I going to do about it? And I'll let you guys know personally for me which ones of these I have experienced, and I'll even explain why so that you can learn from other people's mistakes. But the first one is the most common, and it is underpricing. When you start doing a job like balloon decorating or selling art, which is another way to think about it, pricing your artwork, it's an abstract scenario. Like, it's if you just did the cost of materials and the time that you spend on it, it's going to be a number that just feels really low. Like, you don't really spend a lot in order to make this happen. At least you don't think that you do. And we'll get into that later as well. But a lot of us will start underpricing our decor. And if you underprice your decor, what you are doing is bringing down the value of yourself in your own business. And you are also undermining the profitability that you can obtain for your company, which will limit your growth. And even worse is you're bringing down the overall value of balloon decor in your market. So you're not just hurting yourself and your business, but you're hurting everybody else as well by pricing your decor in such a way that is way undervalued. So wouldn't do that one. And I have been guilty of that one for sure. Now, the flip side of this is overpricing. If you're not pricing your decor specifically tailored to your customer base, then you could be pricing, like if I'm pricing my decor to cater to the uber rich, and I know there's reasons why I would change my price for them, and it is because I know maybe it's a more high maintenance scenario, maybe there's specific things that they value that I have to provide for them. But if I'm setting prices for those customers, but I don't have any of those customers, and I'm doing birthday parties for everybody around in my neighborhood, then I'm probably overpricing. And what's going to happen in that case is nobody's going to say yes. Nobody wants to overpay for anything. And you're going to price yourself out of the market, and your business will not succeed if you don't have your prices in the realm of reason for your customer base. Okay, we talked about overhead a little bit. Ignoring the cost of your decor, or the cost of just doing business. Now, this is one where I will tell you, I have done this in the past, and a prime example, I still failed to this every now and then now. So my company, we do fabric decorations, like fabric backdrops, stuff like that. We have shimmer walls. So if I did a fabric backdrop, it does not use a material that I'm not getting back. I'm getting back 100% of the materials. And then what it does to me is it tells me that all that I feel like if I talk to my wife about this, and let's say it's $1,000 job and it's all pipe and drape, the temptation, and what I've noticed has happened before, is I'll tell my wife, this job only took us 3 hours for 2 people. That is 6 man hours of time. And that is effectively about $150 is what this job cost me to do. Now, if you remember what I talked about earlier about overhead, you will know, even without knowing my overhead numbers, that it cost me way more than just labor to do anything, because I had to have a vehicle, which requires insurance, it requires gas, it requires maintenance. I happen to work out of a workshop, which requires rent payments. Basically, if I don't count overhead, then I'm ignoring one of the larger costs that I experience as a business for every job that we do. So if I say we did $1,000 job and all it cost me is $150, and I allow that kind of pricing to influence my thoughts about money, then I'm thinking I have 85% profit in that job, and that's just not true. And I cannot operate my company as though it is, because if I do, then I'm going to be finding myself going backwards very quick and not paying attention to the reality of the situation. All right, neglecting market research. I am not saying that you guys need to put on your nerd glasses and become market analysts to the degree where you can have a degree and you can do this for other people's businesses. But what I am saying is you need to pay attention. If you don't pay attention to the way that your customers are interacting with you and with your prices, then you might find yourself in a situation where you are underpricing or overpricing, or you're just not getting it right, and it's going to affect your business. So pay attention to your customers, pay attention to the kind of things that they buy outside of your decor. If you've ever lost a job to a different kind of a company, like florists have taken a job where you were getting quotes for centerpieces, maybe find out, well, what did they provide that was better than what I was providing for the price I was asking for? Like, do a little bit of research and find out. That way you can tailor your needs to your customers in such a way that will help you to generate more sales. Okay, we're going to go into this because it is an entire pricing strategy, and there's a way that we approve of using the strategy, and for the most part it is a strategy that I don't get behind. And partially because when people do it, This is how they do it. They blindly copy their competitors' pricing. For your guys' knowledge, I have a 60-page pricing guide on my website. It's amazing. I use it as a tool, and I think it's great. You now know that I have it. And what I will tell you is do not go to my pricing guide and just start writing all of my numbers down and use them as your numbers. You're welcome to look at my numbers. We'll get into it later on what you should do with that information, because it's part of researching a market, right? But don't just blindly copy someone's prices. The way I think about that is if you let me dictate what your prices are, then you're not the boss of your own company. You're letting me be the boss of part of your company when it comes to pricing. And I don't think any of us get into business on our own because we want someone else to tell us how to do it, right? I think we get into business because we want to be responsible for the wins and we're willing to take responsibility for the losses. So don't hand over the pricing of your items to somebody else by just copying what their prices are. It's not a good strategy. Okay. Discounting too freely. This is one that I have also done, and it kind of looks like this. I'm talking to Sally on the phone, and I like Sally. She's a good person, and I'm kind of newish, so I'm not really super confident in my prices. And Sally's like, how much does this column cost? I'm like, oh, like 125. And before she even has time to respond, I feel uncomfortable because there's a second of silence. I'm like, but I'll do it for you for 110. Well, Sally has never even given me a reason to discount that item, but I'm just word vomiting because I'm uncomfortable with the silence of letting my price just sit out there for somebody to respond to. And I'm discounting my items to Sally for no reason. And of course she's going to say yes. Why would she want to pay more when you just offered it cheaper? Another way this could look is, how much does this column cost? Oh, it's like 110 to 125. If you just put it out there that way, somebody's never going to pay 125. They're only going to pay 110 because you just told them you would take that for that item. So don't give discounts. There are such a thing as promotions and sales. You can do intentional discounting of your items for a purpose and for a reason, but I wouldn't just do it because you're uncomfortable giving your prices to somebody and you're uncomfortable with a moment or two of silence. So when you tell somebody your prices, give it to them. If they don't immediately respond, just wait. They will respond. And if they ask you for a discount, once you know your prices and you have everything set the way that you want it to be, you're going to know if giving a discount will make sense or not. And that will be a choice you make intelligently instead of nervously because you don't know what to do. Okay, failing to communicate value. This one gets a little bit into a sales kind of conversation, but we are not, if all you're doing is selling balloon columns and balloon arches, then there's really, the value is, if that's all you're selling, then you're not communicating the value. You're telling them, I have this item. But I will tell you this, when you buy any item, like if I bought a coffee maker, what do you think is going through my mind when I'm going to buy that coffee maker? It is not, I just really want this coffee maker to do its job very well and to make a cup of coffee. That might be what I want, but the reason I'm buying the coffee maker is because I really want coffee itself. I want the feeling that coffee is going to give me in the morning when I'm tired and I drink a cup of coffee and it's going to wake me up. That's the driving force for me to buy the coffee maker. Now, the bells and whistles on the coffee maker, they're going to influence which one I buy. But when I think about coffee makers, like when you see a coffee maker marketing campaign or something, they're not just showing you the product. They're never just showing you, look at this piece of equipment and it has buttons and all this. No, they're showing nice poured cups of coffee, people looking like it's the best thing in the world. Like they're selling you the value of what that thing can provide for you. So if you don't communicate the value of what we're bringing to the table with our decor, then that's a pitfall that's going to hurt your business, right? So think about what value we bring to the table. We bring smiles, we bring a lot of color to a boring space. We bring the party. Like if somebody sees balloons, they know it's a party. That's what we bring. If it's at a wedding, you're going to bring elegance and sophistication. These are the things you need to learn to communicate to your customers so that your prices will make sense for the items that you're selling. Ignoring pricing psychology. So I'll give you two examples. Number one, you will never, ever, ever, ever buy a vehicle from a car lot for $30,000 or $30,005. What you will buy, however, is a vehicle that's $29,999. And if they can get it, the 99 cents on top of that. They will sell you a vehicle that is one penny less than that big number of 30,000. And even though it's one penny less, when you see the 29,000 first, it feels better than 30 in your mind. I haven't gone into a deep dive on the psychology of pricing, but it's used everywhere. It's not a pet peeve of mine, but it feels like a pet peeve, sort of, is if I ask you, how much did gas cost you this morning at the gas station? You would be tempted to say it's $3.58. But if you really pay attention to the price on their billboard, it is $3.58 with a tiny little 9 at the end, which really means it's $3.59. Are you kidding me? Like it's not even a penny different. It is literally 1/10 of a penny different. However, they want you to say $3.58 instead of $3.59. So if we know that the people who have all the money, the oil industry people, gasoline people, the people who are running these car lots and car dealerships, if we know that all of these big stores, Walmart, you go look at their prices, same thing. If we know that these people who have all this money and they're great at making sales are using some form of psychology when they set their prices, why wouldn't we? We don't have to, as balloon decors, as individual small business owners, we do not need to reinvent the wheel and figure all this stuff out ourselves. If you want to, do some research on pricing psychology and things that you can learn that will help you set your prices in a way that will get the sales better. And ultimately, you just can't ignore pricing psychology. Another one that is really helpful is the idea of package pricing. If you buy these 5 things together, then I'm going to give you a deal. That's a psychological hook to try to get somebody to say yes to all of those items together. That's a good example of how to use it properly. If you ignore all that stuff, it might hinder your business a little bit. So let's be smart salespeople. Okay, this is a big one. Not adjusting your prices over time. Now, there are periods where I have gone for probably far too long without adjusting my prices. So this is another one that I've fallen into in the past. So I think for me, underpricing, discounting too freely, and not adjusting my prices are probably the 3 for me of all of these that I know have probably impacted me in the past the most. But if you don't adjust your prices over time, in a world where everybody else does adjust their prices, then what does that mean? That means you are willing to go to work to make less money doing the same work that you were doing before. Nobody wants to do that in this world. Nobody takes another job doing the same exact thing for less pay than they were getting before. So we need to be smart and adjust our prices over time so that our company can stay relevant and successful. And the last one, this one can be a big one. And people who are newer in the industry, I feel like probably fall into this one. And I know that I did also when I first started. and it is lacking confidence in your prices. So part of the reason you might lack confidence is because you haven't taken a class like you're taking now, and you haven't done your own research to understand why it's not that you want to charge these prices. We are going to talk about prices in such a way that if you want to succeed, and if you refuse to become a statistic that we just looked at that we're bad, if you want to succeed and you want to thrive, you have to set your prices to the ways that you're going to set them. And then when you go and you deliver that price to your customer, you're going to have the confidence, because if they really, really wanted to whine and cry about it, one, maybe they're not your customer anyways and they need to go somewhere else. Or two, you can adequately explain to them, look, I run a business. This, it's not a charity. This is what pays my bills. I have vehicle expenses. I have employees I have to pay. I have lease payments on the place that we rent. Like, there are reasons why my prices are what they are, and I can't really change them too much. Like, I've spent a lot of time getting my prices where they are. And not that we ever need to go through all of that with anybody, because we don't. But I'm just saying, if you know the reason why your prices are what they are, you're going to have confidence. Lacking confidence is usually because of somebody being ignorant in how to do business successfully. And again, it's a pitfall that could really bite someone in the butt cheeks. Okay, so we are going to get into pricing strategies next. I'm going to end this video so that we have this part for people to kind of digest, and they'll be able to understand why this is important, and they'll be able to understand the things that they need to be mindful of. And you can reflect on for yourself. You can reflect and see, are any of those things that I need to pay attention to? And if you answer yes to any of those, which we probably all can in some way, shape, or form, as we go through the next sections, start looking at the things that are going to help you overcome those hurdles and those pricing pitfalls as we move forward. So thank you for this, for showing up. I believe I'm going to try to do this in 2 or 3 more sections, and stay tuned.